some really good insight there. With the building of the teams and making sure everybody's got focusing in on that right area, so that way you structure things correctly. So the main, runner of the business, you and I or whoever's at the forefront of that business is working on the front, bringing in the new clients. Obviously, you need to build that virtual team, which we starting to talk about. The last question I want to ask you on this is how you see virtual teams fitting in together with people in your office. Because I know you've got people who work offshore and around the world, but you also have people working in with you at the office, and everybody's got these dreams of building up, these Eben Pagan-esque businesses where they've just got a massive entire virtual team, so everything happens and they don't have to worry about it because it's not front and center with them. Just like to get your take on how you marry together virtual teams with, physical teams working in with you.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, it comes down to really the person. For example, like I'm really good at getting businesses off the ground, at getting them big fast. I'm not the best person to run a company on a day-to-day basis, which is why I don't run my company, because of who I am. And, once a company gets to a certain size, like I'm really not that great of a leader because I'm more focused on other things than leadership. Not that I don't think leadership's important. It's just that that's not really where that's not my focus. When I've had to do it, I can do it very well, but it's not where I'm happiest. And so I have someone else who runs the day-to-day of my company. I think it goes the same way when we're talking about in-house versus virtual. Like strategic profits has both. But for someone like me, I'm much better in person than I am virtual because you have to be a much better manager of people to really pull off a virtual organization. And most people don't pull it off well. Very few people do. There's a lot more complexity to it. And, Ann Holland, who used to own Marketing Sherpa until she sold it, she used to be a virtual company. And then one day she just had enough. And she was like, you're either moving to, I don't remember where her office was, but like sent it to the whole team. You're either moving here or you're fired, because it's an added level of complexity. It can be done. And I know it's a dream for a lot of people, but the ideal scenario, in my opinion, is to figure out how you work best. Because I have I have employees and I have virtual employees, but really I don't have a responsibility to go into the office if I don't want to go into the office. And there are many days I don't go into the office these days. So I don't really, to me, it doesn't really matter how the company works. The goal is not for me to have, I would be extremely unhappy having a virtual company where I had to be managing people all day long, because it's really about how the company's being run as opposed to whether it's physical or virtual. So, and I don't know if I'm making sense there, but what I'm saying is that you can have a business that you're completely free of, whether you have a physical office with employees or whether you have a whole virtual team. Either way, because the goal of it, because you can be free of the business regardless, right? It doesn't matter. Like, you could also be tied to a business that is virtual or is physical. If your presence is needed, then you're still tied to the business. If you need to be interacting with all your virtual employees all the time, then you're no freer than somebody who has to go into an office. So it's really about what you believe is best for you. In certain ways, virtual has certain advantages because it's very easy to establish results, because you have to, because you can't get confused about anything else, because ultimately you're telling people to do certain things, and if you give them the right responsibilities, they either succeed at that or they fail. And so it's very easy to judge employees. When they work in a physical location, it can be a little bit more difficult to judge employees because your mind can get clouded about their work ethic and this and that, and really none of that stuff really matters at the end of the day if they are able to do their job well and they deliver on the responsibilities that you're fairly paying them for. So in that sense, actually, it's easier to be virtual, but then you really have to have a very clear plan of exactly what needs to be done and know that if this employee is handling that responsibility and this employee is handling that responsibility and this employee is handling that responsibility, then this business is going to work perfectly. And so these people just have to do these things. Then you can have a virtual business. If you're someone who comes up with ideas last minute and changes plans, which I like to do sometimes, then that becomes a scarier proposition because it's harder to get everybody in the same place, because everybody's free to kind of work their own hours and all that kind of stuff. So that's why personally for me, I like physical locations, because I like to be, and it's, even in our company, in our offices, Brian, who really runs the day-to-day of our company, he has his own office, right? Private office, and accounting has their own office, and we have conference rooms and video rooms and stuff like that. But then there's a big pit where a bunch of employees work, and I work in the big pit because I enjoy working in the big pit. And it's also like, if we're working on something big, I can call an audible and like we can all focus on something. And that's just my preference. So it really comes down to preference. I think, though, that people shouldn't be deluded in the fact, like I said, that like whether it's physical or virtual, it necessitates freedom or being shackled to a business, because you can be just as free with a virtual or a physical, and you can be just as shackled with a virtual as a physical. So it's really more comes down to, you shouldn't let that be the distinguishing point. It really should be based on how you work. And if you work well virtually and you really are someone who can lay out a plan, tell people with plenty of time notice exactly what needs to be done, and if they all do those things, it comes together well, then virtual is an option for you. But if you can't do that, then I would be very hesitant to take that route.